Guys, Footy Focus Podcast, episode 33. We are recording on January 28th. This is Nax here, and as always, Shahan joining us.
Hey, Shanaka, how's it going?
I shouldn't say joining you, you're the co-host.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm always a guest. This is actually Shanaka's podcast, his idea.
I do that.
Okay, so we might kick off with some footy news quickly. Anything making the news today?
Yeah, so the big news, I think it was last week, the Shane Tuck diagnosis came in for CTE. So he passed away last year. So CTE, we've talked about it before, it can only be diagnosed post-death. So that adds to the Graham, Polly Farmer and Danny Frawley news last year. So since then, the AFL and AFLW have introduced a new rule, made official, I think it was today. So there's a mandatory post-concussion test, and the non-playing period is a minimum 12 days. So that is up from 7 days previously, and effectively means if you get concussion, you miss the next week.
Right, so if a player gets knocked out in a game and he's ruled out with concussion, so he can't play for another 12 days.
Yeah. So, and that can be post-match too. So you can have a knock during the game, but you're doing post-concussion test after the game, and if there's a diagnosis there, then you miss 12 days minimum.
Yeah, or training, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's all contact. So
yeah. So was it 7 days before?
Yeah, so 7 days. So I think that meant a lot of players. I mean, we saw a lot of players miss the next week last year, and probably the last couple of years, but a few got up because of that 7 day rule. But it's the next week, effectively gone, which is a good thing, I think. Yeah,
definitely. I think anything to reduce the effects of concussion post playing, it's definitely I'm on board. So I don't know. It might mean a team might be a little bit weaker the next week if a gun player gets concussed, but then it just comes down to having a deep list. So
similar to last year with COVID and all the shortened breaks. I think the teams that did well last year had a good squad.
To
play.
And that's about it. I think there's a couple of other minor news stories. The Women's League gets underway today, so that should be good. So I'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, Pies and Blues.
Yeah, so I think the Kangaroos have a strong squad again, so hopefully challenge. Port have a team this year?
No, not yet. Okay. You're rubbing it in now. Okay. We had Erin Phillips before she committed to the Crow since we didn't get a team. But anyway.
I will start our reviews.
So we've got Collingwood and Essendon today, so we'll kick off with the Pies.
Yeah, speaking of Collingwood, we have a new follower on our Twitter, so Matty
Benici, so he's an ex-alumni. Yeah, that's the one, alumni. The same year level as us, and he's got Talking City pod on SEN.
Yeah, so he's a passionate Collingwood supporter, so we might kick off with Collingwood. So, season review. They, in the home and away season, 9 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw to finish 8th.
Just snuck in.
Yeah, and they obviously beat West Coast to creep a little bit higher, but percentage of 109.5. So they slid a bit. They tend to do this. A few years ago, when Buckley came in, they slid, and then they went up, and now they're sort of sliding slowly.
Yeah, since the grand final, I think it's top 4 and now a top 6 finish.
So they beat the Eagles, like I said, which was very impressive, but then got smashed by the Cats the week after.
So how did the Copeland Trophy go?
Yes, we like talking about the best and fairest. So Taylor Adams took it out. He won his maiden best and fairest.
Yeah, fair result.
Yeah, and he'd be the next captain, would you say?
Yeah, I think he's a good age as well, and he's led from the front the whole year.
Yeah, and led in disposals, tackles, and clearances. So it's not easy to do. I don't think too many players would lead teams in those categories.
All categories, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the captain, Pendlebury came in second, followed by Jack Crisp, Darcy Moore, Braden Maynard, Josh Dacos, rounded out the top 6.
And we had Brody Grundy equal 17, a disappointing year for him. And John Noble's done pretty well since he's been a mid-season pickup. He was 8th.
Yeah, he's probably been the pickup out of that mid-season draft. So the son of new Kangaroos coach David Noble. So
yes.
He's pretty underrated, I suppose. Yeah, finished 8th.
Played in all the finals and been a best 22 player the whole time.
Yeah, and so the main takeaways from that best and fairest is, Grundy, poor year. We might talk a bit about him later, but Pendlebury just keeps on keeping on. And he broke the record for the most games as captain. Yeah.
Just Tony Shaw, he broke that record, didn't he?
Yeah.
And, Maynard and Dacos, I think, were the new faces in the top 10 from previous years.
Yeah, so it's good to have a few young faces in there. What worked for them?
Yeah, so for me, it was the back line. So I think in the first probably 4 to 6 weeks, they were, I think, the highest rated back line ever in terms of points conceded. I think, Darcy Moore, Jeremy Howe, especially pre-injury, because he was probably the form backman of the comp. Maynard, who we mentioned previously, and Crisp all had all-Australian quality seasons. So they held the opposition below 60 in 11 of 19 games, and I thought, the back line stood up pretty well with Quaynor and Roughhead as kind of role players in there.
Yeah, I was going to mention Roughhead, but before Howe's injury, they've just been settled down back, I think. Moore, who's in his prime, had another outstanding year. Led that. So for me, it was the efforts against the top teams. So they tend to play well in big games, and it was no exception this year. So against West Coast in the final, Geelong earlier in the year, and the Dogs, and also Richmond, who they drew against in round 2, I think. Maybe 2.
Yeah, it was early on. They draw against the team that won the flag. So.
Yeah, and they've still got an ability to get their hands on the footy, so they're big possession winners, and they are able to get the ball inside forward 50 a lot. So they finish 8th for inside 50s.
Yeah, so we'll talk about what failed. So this is probably a longer list. So for me, it was the forward line inefficiency plus the slow ball movement, I think, which contributed to that. So Goey, Stevenson, Elliott, Cox, and Myercheck, I thought all had below average seasons. Yeah.
Well, Myercheck was okay. I thought.
I think in the final he was okay against West Coast. I don't think he was as consistent as previous years, but I think out of those 5, he was probably the best of the 5. Didn't have a poor year, but I think average probably. And you're under 60 points in 11 of 19 games, so it kind of contrasted the back line.
Yeah, so poor conversion. So even though they get the ball in there quite a bit, they were 15th for total scores per inside 50. So they're not going in there with any direction, or they're just lacking a key forward or target.
And I think we've talked about that a fair bit, the key forward. I think Cox has stood up here and there. I think Will Kelly looks like a prospect. He looked fantastic before the injury, I think, in his debut game. So whether he's ready enough to be the number 1 key, but they've got a lot of small forwards there, and Stevenson's gone now, obviously, as well. Yeah,
so speaking of injuries, that was my sort of what failed. So injuries tend to get them quite a bit in recent years. So to key players, and they also carry a few injury-prone players. So in the injury ladder, they were 3rd in it. So games missed by best 22. So they were behind the Roos and Freo. So these include guys like Jeremy Howe, De Goey, Treloar, who missed large parts of the year, and guys who tend to be on the list quite a lot, like Greenwood, Langdon, Sier, Reid, and Dunn. There's a lot of experience on the sidelines.
Yeah, and I think Langdon, Reid, and Dunn have retired since, haven't they?
Yeah, and you've got one more.
Yeah, so Brodie Grundy, I think it's a pretty obvious one. So he's fresh off a mega 7-year contract. I think along with Jeremy Hammond, probably the biggest form dip in the comp. I think Bucks probably put it down to the COVID bubble in the presser after the Geelong loss in the final. Had to share ruck duties with Darcy Cameron, who they brought in for the 2 finals, and still only 26. He should have his prime years ahead, but he'd like a better year from him. Yeah,
when the midfield never really get the advantage of his dominance. When he has a bad year, it's going to get magnified. So,
100%.
Yeah, so we all know what else failed, but we're not going to touch on how they handled trade period, because
we've smacked them enough, or?
Oh yeah, we're sick to death of it. So we'll just go on straight to who deserves a pay rise.
Yeah, so Jack Cripps for me, another backman. So he's a steak knives in the Beams trade to the Lions, or so we thought. I think he's proved to be much more than that. Lowest finish is 9th in the best and fairest in 6 years at the club, including 3 third-place finishes. 9th in uncontested possession, 17th in marks, and 19 in metres gains in the comp. And probably there's a bit of potential there to spend a bit more time in the midfield, potentially wing, just with his ball use.
Yeah, just a role player and a really good one. So doesn't have to be a superstar, but just plays his role. So similarly, my one's Braden Maynard.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Probably a little bit more damaging than Chris.
Yeah.
But he's worked on that. So his kicking has much improved. He used to butcher it a little bit. So I think, he's just improved. And I think it was just about getting games and experience. So had a solid year 2019, but he really broke out the last year. Averaged close to 20 touches a game. And he was 14th in total rebound 50s and 4th for intercepts.
Yeah, I think the lockdown role he plays on Toby Green, Liam Ryan. Yeah, Bucks just trusts him with the best small forward.
Yeah, it's an important role. You need a good small defender, and he does that, and he can also play a little bit of an attacking offensive role. Yeah,
100%. And we'll move on to who needs a big next year. So it's Jordan De Goey for mine. Oh, not Jordan De Goey. That's your one. Braden Sier for mine. So he looked like a best 22 player in the 2018 grand final year. But like you said, I think injuries have cost him, first team berth, only 9 games. It's a big body mid at 191 centimetres, only 23. And I think if you're looking, he's not going to replace Pendles, but you'd like to think he steps up as that inside mid and plays all games.
Yeah, he'll have the opportunity now, especially with Treloar moving out and a couple of other players not being there. So hopefully he can take that opportunity. And De Goey might not be there either.
Good segue.
Now he's my who needs a big 2021. So he has been charged with indecent assault from 2015. So it's still pending, I think, to see what will happen.
Is he going to court yet? I thought it meant to be after this. Maybe it got deferred till the next year. I'm not sure, but
so they'll have to get over that hurdle. But once he gets back, he'd be hoping to play more than 8 games, which he did last year. Just very had a up and down year.
Yeah, he had a couple of good games. I think Cats and I
think the Gold Coast.
So won those games.
Yeah, against the Cats, it was his first game back in, and he kicked 5-1, from 17 touches, and this was in Perth, and he absolutely killed it, and then backed it up a week after. But it just seems a bit all or nothing for Collingwood. So it's important he stays fit and has a consistent year.
Yeah, we saw it in the final against the Eagles. What a difference he can make! Just I think a couple of goals out of nothing.
Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah, so key players that left and came in. So out, Treloar and Stevenson were the main ones. Tom Phillips is wouldn't say it's a big loss, probably not a best 22 player now.
Yeah, sort of in the fringes. So, he went to Hawthorn.
And Atu, not going to say his last name.
I'll have a go.
Go.
Atu Bosanavalagi.
So he's to your boys, the Roos. We've got Ben Reid, Lyndon Dunn, Eglandon retired. Got Beams. Say it's a retirement, wouldn't you?
Retirement, yeah.
So that's probably a big fail from a list management perspective too, because they put a lot of money into him and obviously had his off-field problems too. But
not all Collingwood's fault. I mean, Beams did want to go there, so
just didn't work out, didn't it?
Yeah, and Broomhead was injury prone and he's out, along with Langdon, who we talked about, Scharenberg, another one, Varco, Rupert Wills, Appleby, who's training with the Kangaroos as well. Okay.
A few guys training with the Roos.
A couple of them, Skinner and Appleby.
And the trades and free agencies, there weren't any free agency ins, but we'll talk about who they picked up at the draft. Fairly big draft for the
we'll quickly mention them. There was Henry McRae, who have got brothers playing in the league. Reef McInnes, Caleb Poulter, Liam McMahon, and Bew McCreary. Is that how you say it?
McCreary. Might be an Irish one. Sounds like an Irish surname. So,
but we'll go into a bit more depth.
Yep, so our first pick 17 was Oliver Henry.
Yeah, so the brother of Jack Henry from Geelong. So he's a 186 centimetre medium forward from the Falcons. High leaping, strong in the air, and a good athlete in terms of speed and agility. So he's a bit of a swingman, so he can play either end. So he'll be looking to possibly get early games.
And pick 19, another brother, Finlay McRae.
Yeah, Finlay, half-brother actually. So
half-brother, okay.
Yeah, but they look very similar, and apparently they play similar styles. So 186 centimetre again, Oakley Chargers boy. Reads the play well, plans plenty of the footy, and like his brother, he's composed and pretty balanced on both sides of the body and has great endurance.
And Reef McGuinness, he's the next gen prospect, wasn't he?
Yeah, so bit of a gift here, and he slid a bit as well on draft night. So, yeah, a tall mid, so 193 centimetre, another Oakley boy. So, yeah, he reads the game pretty well. The games I saw, I didn't see him do much in the midfield, but I only saw one game. But, yeah, wins a lot of contested ball and has elite speed. With he ran 7.78 seconds for the 20 metre. Yeah, so that's really quick. It was like a record or something.
Yeah. And pick 30, Caleb Poulter.
Yeah, they've gone for similar types here with Henry and McRae, or maybe not similar, but similar height, and Reef McInnes and Poulter, similar height. Another tall mid has a penetrating kick of his preferred left foot, and again, strong in the air, and he's just a prolific ball winner when he played for South Australia, so 34 possessions in the All-Star game, and a bit of a bolter.
Yeah, pick 31, Liam McMahon.
Key forward, 194. So there's like 1 centimetre difference between him and McInnes, and one's a mid, one's a forward. Yeah. So hard running tall forward is McMahon, and good speed off the mark. So I think when key forwards go this late, there's a bit of development left in them, and hopefully he can be physically developed so he can get the best out of him. But it's good below his knees and an accurate kick.
And last pick 44, Bo McCreary.
So this guy is a 19-year-old. So he played for the Sandful, so a small forward. So he just brings that tackling pressure and goal sense.
So it's a slight mature age pickup.
Yeah, slightly. Yeah. So these are all like information from reports and listening to other podcasts. So they picked up a couple of rookies as well, Jack Ginnivan and Isaac Chugg. So Ginnivan's from Bendigo and Isaac's from Tassie. And Jack Brisky, who's training with the Magpies.
So I guess they didn't redeem themselves for the trade period, but they did pick up, I'd say, 5 picks within the first 31. And I think because McGuinness dropped, they were able to pick up 2 players ahead of him. Is that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so they did trade their first rounder this year.
Yeah.
They reckon they'll get used up for Nick Dacos.
Yeah, brother of Josh. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did. They got some good young talent in. So it's too early to tell. So we'll just have to revisit it in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. And Cal's inside word from the draft guru.
Yeah, so Collingwood did a lot. So I think what they did was pretty transparent. But from what we don't know, it looked like they were keen on Gold Coast pick 7. But Gold Coast didn't want it more than Collingwood's first this year. Essendon wanted Collingwood's pick 14 and this year's first for pick 8, but Collingwood said no. And Heath Chapman and Connor Stone were also on the radar for their first pick. Okay. But they went with Henry. Yeah. I guess a couple of them were taken. Maybe Pat Chapman was definitely taken.
Yeah.
Stone might have been there.
Go through your best 22.
Do you want to do this maybe?
Okay, I'll do it. Best 22 for next year. So you got backline, Maynard, Roughhead and Howe. Halfbacks, Chris, Darcy Moore and Quaynor. Wingers, we've got Josh Dacos and Steele Sidebottom. It's got Penbury in the centre. Half forwards, Jamie Elliott, Brody Mychek, Will Hoskin-Elliott. Forward line got Goey, Cox and Josh Thomas. Followers, Brody Grundy, Taylor Adams and Sier. And on the bench, you've got Noble, Greenwood, Will Kelly and Chris Mayne.
Yeah, a bit of an experienced lineup there. So, I don't know, maybe Greenwood and Mayne don't make it and you debut Oliver Henry or, Finlay McRae.
Or keep playing Callum or Tyler Brown, because they've got, you probably don't think the other boys, the other draftees make their best 22 just yet. Because they're a top 8 team still.
Mm-hmm. And hard to see, hard to know whether the Vic boys will make it. So even like a Trey Rusco could slot in there because he showed some promise towards the end of last year.
So what do you think about, I guess, their experience? Because they've lost a lot of a lot of that.
They're going to lose that voice, I think, on field and in training. So it almost seems like a bit of a mini rebuild, would you say?
Yeah, I think, 100%. You've lost, a few players like Dunn, Treloar, Stevenson, Langdon, Ben Reid, Beam, so Barco as well. It's all, you'd say best 22 players at their best. And replenish with, 6 draft picks.
Yeah, so it might take a few years of not competing to reach the top 4 again, I'd say. Yeah. They need to find a couple of more genuine mids, so I think that's a weakness of theirs. Yeah. After Pendlebury, they sort of, and Sidebottom, they sort of lack a bit of genuine midfield depth.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, missing Treloar this season too.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about a grade and projection?
Yep, so grade I've got a C for them, so it's a pass mark, but not entirely. We've got Howe and Sidebottom absences I thought were pretty crucial. 2 of their top 5 players. I think you mentioned before their depth after their probably top 5 to 10 players aren't as good as other top 8 teams. So the belting by the Cats showed how far away they were. I still expect a 6 to 8 finish with big ears from Grundy and Goey. Plus the emergence of Quain or Dacos and Will Kelly, who I really rate as well. Still too young to be a number 1 key forward, but I think the talent's there. So, how about you? Don't think they're going to make finals based on what you
No,
said?
I don't think so. But I think they'll be on the fringes. Yeah. Maybe in 10th to like 14th,
not
15th.
Bottom 4 or anything, but
there's a chance. Someone has to finish in the bottom. It can't just be the Kangaroos and Essendon. So, a team will slide. Could be Collingwood. Yeah. Especially if Moore gets an injury or I don't know, Goey misses a large chunk of the year.
Yeah, Moore is really crucial. Probably their best key forward as well as their best key back.
Yeah, interesting team to watch. One of the most, as always. Yeah, there'll be a lot of eyes on the Pies.
Yep, so move on to the Dons. So how did you find the
pretty? Okay, it's almost as bad as the Kangaroos. So, all right. So they had 6 wins, 10 losses, and 1 draw to finish 13th with 79.2%. That was the 3rd worst percentage.
Yeah, so they're 3 games out of the 8 and effectively 30% behind the 8th place club.
It was only 8% behind the Roos. So, after winning their first couple of early ones by a kick or around a kick, it was just downhill from there.
So with the B and F, so Jordan really was the runaway favourite, wasn't he?
Yeah, unbelievable. For a guy who's played like 10 games or something coming into the season. Finished on top. Or he was almost all Australian.
Probably should have been. I think they're rewarding a couple of years being strung together like Darcy Burn-Jones and
you need more
Ryan.
than I think so. If Hamish McIntosh wasn't going to get all Australian all those years ago, after he had a breakout year because he didn't have 2 good years, then Jordan really shouldn't. So if you can replicate what he did this year, then he'll be a shoe-in. Mm-hmm. So he finished 10th for total marks and 2 for effective disposals per game, which is absolutely huge. Yeah, and you need that coming out of defence.
Yeah, so you got Zach Merritt and Adam Sard rounding out the top 3 with Kyle Langley was a bit of a bolter at 4th. Andrew McGrath, Darcy Parish, Donald Tippin Woody, Devon Smith, Will Snelling and Dylan Shield rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, it's really good to see a lot of young players there. That's the thing that's a positive to come out of the year, I suppose, with Ridley, Langford, McGrath, Parish, all in the top 6. Yeah, very positive.
All 25 and younger too, so it's a good future in that good core, I guess, to build around from that perspective.
Yeah. What worked for them?
Yeah, so I thought, like you mentioned, I thought Ridley, McGrath, Parish and Langford all took big steps forward in their career. Highlighted by the top 10 finish. So I thought Kyle Langdon had a super year. I think much maligned, by the supporters and probably outside, but really stepped up. And Parish I thought was pretty good. Probably needs more midfield time as well. When he does go in the midfield, he does seem to get a lot of touches and do damage with it.
Yeah, and for me, I thought they scavenged what they could from the draft and trade period after players walking out. So, what the pick they got for Jordan De Goey was...
Danaher.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
They got
I'll edit that.
Similar talent.
So, the pick they got for Danaher was above.
Above average, for a injury-prone player.
So I didn't think they deserved it, but of course, how they calculate it. they got that pick. And not getting Dunkley, I thought, was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, so why is that, you reckon? Because they didn't have to give up
they
first round pick?
Yeah, they would have to give up 2 first-round picks because that's what the Dogs were asking. But I think, which is overs for Dunkley.
Yeah, big overs, yeah.
Yeah, so it's good they didn't give that up, and they can go into this draft and pick 3 quality players.
Yeah, in the top 8, wasn't it? So we'll talk about them in a bit more detail.
Yeah, whether you pick 3 or you trade, that's another debate, but I think it's good they hung on to those picks and went to the trade. And they had 2 NGA players as well, 2 talls.
Down the track, So what failed? So I think club culture is probably the obvious one with Danner and Sard leaving. And I think, Merritt's obviously unsigned at the moment. That's going to be a huge talking point.
Yeah.
Until he does.
And the interviews he's had, hasn't...
Non-committal.
Yeah, he hasn't suggested he's close or anything. But, they need to fix that boys' club culture that's there. So they brought Kevin Sheedy back for a role on the board or something?
Yeah, it looked a bit of just face time. But
yeah, it feels like that, just to make supporters happy. And I think they've got a bit of work to do to be a bit more of a transparent club because... they were getting mixed messages, from the club, the supporters were. Yeah. There was just confusion coming from the club as well with whether they're rebuilding or not. So if players walk out, you get top-end picks, then do you go for a Dunkley or do you look to, bottom out a bit? Yeah,
and I think while you're on that, I think the other thing that failed was just the transition of the coach. I think Rutten... obviously the understudy and taking all the quarter time, 3/4 time huddles and during the week, but also still doing the presser. So I don't think that worked from that sense. I think it would have been better if just Rutten had the reins for that whole year. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but hopefully he'll be a good coach, and they give him time as well to develop the players, and they don't look for the quick fix, and they sort of keep blooding these young players in and see and do it that way rather than taking shortcuts. And 100%. They've got, I think, Blake Carosella from the Tigers as well, so hopefully they shouldn't implement the Tigers game plan, but I think they've got definitely one of the better assistant coaches going around. Some stability from the top, and it'll sort of filter down, and you'll be able to retain your stars. So we'll move on to the stars. Who deserves a pay rise for you? Yeah, I thought Andy McGrath really had an ultra-consistent year, so he'll be close to their next captain, I'd say. Yeah, I think probably Schilling, wasn't it? Yeah, might be a bit too young. Maybe next year he might take the reins. So he averaged 22.1 touches a game and 4.8 tackles. Yeah, it's huge. Big for a halfback. Yeah, I think he played a bit more midfield, but even for reduced game time sort of year, it's huge. So 19th for tackles overall and also 19th for clearances. It's a neat kick. I wouldn't say he's an absolute gun kick, but so he can use that and his pace to provide a point of difference in the midfield. But in terms of position, do you reckon he keeps playing midfield or would they push him to half-back? Yeah, I reckon half-back because they've got obviously Sard and McKenna on left and they were kind of the two rebounders off half-back. I think they've probably got enough depth in the midfield, but I think, McGrath definitely playing off half-backs. Every team needs a half-back that can use the ball as well as him. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. Like, you get Heppel back, so he might play more mid. In that role too, Yeah, and Jordan really was the obvious one. So, all Australian quality in the breakout third year. I think on the 9 games, as you mentioned, in his first 2 years. So, double that tally nearly in his third and, second in effective disposals. Probably just one of the few A-graders on the list and one of the players you should build around in the next 5 to 10 years. Signed a 4-year contract extension, so probably not going to get that pay raise. But I think that was before the BNF as well. So I'm not sure whether that cost him some money there. But no, I don't think so. Who knows? He might be able to renegotiate because contracts don't mean much. Yeah, you can always tear it up. And he was awesome. And I think both those guys were from the same draft as well. So it's a good draft for them. And Sam Draper's the other one who we just quickly mentioned. Yeah. He had a good year, so good long-term ruck prospect there. Who needs a big next year? Yeah, so I've got Devon Smith. So, like Ridley, this guy won a Best and Fairest
only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, so only 27 years old, so he's just in his prime at the moment. So, he'll want to have a big year next year after 16 games, but only averaged 18 touches, and he was shifted positions. He shifted a bit this year, so he played a bit more back, which he wasn't that effective in, I thought. Yeah. He's only 174 centimeters, so he's not that big body. So I don't know, maybe he needs more support around him to play more midfield because they've got a smallish midfield.
Yeah, he's meant to be a tackling machine. I think it's the leg injury that just carried over, and there was questions whether I think the Dons did their due diligence when they picked him up from the Giants. Hopefully, it doesn't hold him back because he's definitely got the talent.
Oh, well, he was fine before. Like, he's been awesome for Essendon.
Just since that BNF, obviously.
So sure he can get his body right, but maybe some support in the mid. Without Job there, I think they just lack that support.
Yeah, and Heppel's been really injured too the last couple of years as well. So for me, it's Jake Stringer. So probably the most talented player on the list. Only 10 games last year. Yeah, just needs to be fit. I think the body was much talked about, but it just doesn't look like a pro athlete at the end of the day. And it should be aimed for 30 plus goals plus midfield burst, just with his explosiveness, and he's out of contract at the end of 2021. So does happen a fair bit. Players playing for their future do have a big year. So
I think Mason Wood's one who had a good year in his contract year.
Got 4 years.
That's our first Mason Wood reference for the episode. We try to get one a week.
Is it big fans?
He'd want to have a good year. So he can turn it on and he can win a game off his own boot, as he's done against the Roos many times. But just a little bit of an inconsistent to 2020.
Yeah, so we'll go outs and in. So, a lot of outs here. So, you got Joe Danaher, Adam Sard and Fantasia all moved. Connor McKenna retired, as well as Bell Chambers. Sean McKenna was delisted but then picked up by the Saints. Yeah. Same with Townsend to Gold Coast. And retirees got a few lesser names. McQuillan, Hibbard, Much, Beckley, Gown, and Crawford.
Yeah, and in comes Wright, Caldwell, Hind from other clubs, and they drafted Cox, Perkins, Reed, Eyre, and Brand, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, so pick 8 is Nicholas Cox.
Yeah, so with their first of their 3 top picks, they picked up Northern Knights key forward, so 199 centimetre elite kicking player, so a bit of a swingman as well, can play back or forward, and he's strong in the air, clean hands, and good below his knees. He just needs to gain a lot more weight, so I think he's a bit of a rake. So he might. He apparently he's been tearing it up on the track, so could play this year, but who knows?
Next pick actually in the draft, Archie Perkins.
Yeah, this guy made the news on the days leading up to the draft. A Sandy Dragons boy, 185 centimetre medium forward. Just creative, smart player. Kicks with his kicking ability, he can set up goals. Long penetrating kick, and he's good overhead, and he's got a lot of power and speed as well. So, and I reckon he can really, be a fan favourite.
Yeah, and stayed in Victoria too, like he wanted. So, pick 10, Zach Reed.
Yeah, this pick, I reckon they might have been better off trading. I don't know. I just feel like a lot of clubs might have wanted this pick, but maybe none did. Zach Reed was the one they took. Giftland power, tall defender, 202 centimetres. Again, he's a little bit skinny, so he'll need to work hard in the gym, but he's good overhead, precise kick on both feet, and a one-touch player between his knees.
Pick 39, Josh Eyre.
Yeah, so 197 centimetre tall, part of their NGA academy. So, good user by foot, an endurance athlete, and he's a sort of marking target.
Now, last pick 53, Cody Brandt's another next-gen prospect.
Yeah, and a teammate of Ayres. So he's a 195 centimetres tall defender. Overhead marking and ability to go forward are his strengths, and he's good mobility and long kicking.
Yeah, so big trend here. So out of that 5 picks, 4 tall forwards or defenders.
Yeah,
so
big man.
Do you think it's due to, I guess, Hooker and Hurley nearing the end, plus Danaher leaving, or you
Yeah.
think they just see a need?
It was a good opportunity because those players were touted to go around that range, and they also had a need. So I think it's good drafting.
It fills both purposes.
Yeah, and if one of them doesn't get up or two of them don't make it, then the other two hopefully will. So they need to. They don't have much depth in that areas. They got Thatcher and Wright, I suppose, but he's a little bit older. So
And they re-recruited Gleeson and Dylan Clark as well.
Yeah, like a lot of teams tend to do. And in terms of Cal's inside word, there was not a lot. They tried to get Collingwood's first pick this year and last year. Their
Next
pick 14 and this year's first. But could not do it. So again, that sort of trade would have been nice, but obviously wasn't enough. So Collingwood declined.
Yeah, we'll move on to their best 22 for next year.
Yeah, so from the back line, we got Redmond, Hooker, Ambrose. Halfbacks, Ridley, Hurley, and Nick Hind. Centre line, Zach Merritt, Heppel, McGrath. Half forward, Stringer, Peter Wright, and Parrish. Full forward is McDonald, Tippenwoody, Stewart, Snelling. Followers, Draper, Devon Smith, and Dylan Shield. Interchange, you got Francis, Langford, Caldwell, and Archie Perkins.
Who I moved in there instead of Zaharakis, just with Zaharakis needing. I think Perkins is probably the most draft-ready prospect, you'd say.
Yeah, I suppose, maybe Cox, potentially, depending on how he goes in the preseason. But, I think Perkins, he looked... he was in physical condition, like good physical condition when he rocked up to that training prior to the draft. So, he should get games. And maybe Cahill and Francis might squeeze in.
Yeah, Aaron Francis looked really good a couple of years ago as that intercepting back. So whether he can, be more consistent and play that role. Because he's a first-round pick as well.
And so Thatcher would be looking for that Hooker or Hurley spot in defence. So
needs to bulk up.
Pump games into him.
Yep.
Any other words? Nah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, look at them. If they got Merritt, Heppel, McGrath, Devon Smith and Dylan Shields. So the top five, you've got Caldwell, who's effectively a first-round pick from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Kyle Langford. So their midfield's very deep, and you can see that with their draft as well. Maybe they just feel like their midfield's pretty stocked.
Yeah, a bit of pressure on Caldwell. I think he's got to have a good year, try to finish top 10 in the best and fairest. Yep. Comes in on a big contract, and a lot of hype about him. Hasn't shown too much at Greater Western Sydney. And, and Nick Hind, do you reckon he can fulfill that Adam Sard role as well?
Yeah, I think if you can do that, if him and Jordan Ridley and Mason Redmond can fill those roles, then you can play McGrath on a wing like you have, so like you've picked. So that fills a need, and I think McGrath's probably better suited midfield as well.
I mean, looking at the team, it's a good list. Like any given day, I think they can beat anyone. But so that's why the leadership of that group might be thinking they're not too far away. Yeah. But on the other hand, if they don't turn up and they're not switched on, or they have a couple of injuries, they could really look like a bottom 4 team.
Yeah.
We might go on to their grade and projection.
Yeah, so it's a D for me, so it has to be a fail. 3 games and nearly 30.
I think that's almost generous, a D.
What, do you want E? F?
Maybe a E.
E. Haven't used E before, but okay, we'll go E. So it's still a fail, but closer to an F grade. 3 games and nearly 30% out of the 8, like we mentioned. I think senior players like Hooker, Hurley, Heppel, Zaharakis and Smith need to play more and have just better years. But none of them had good years. Heppel with the injury, obviously, but the rest just probably form. I'd probably say, I said 8 to 10, I'd probably revise that. I'd probably say 11 to 13. I don't think they're top, bottom 4 just yet. They are lacking a key forward, though. There's no number one clear forward with Wright, Stewart and Stringer. Hooker forward really hasn't worked in the past consistently, and they really need Francis or a slender Zerk Thatcher to really hold down a key position in the future. And they've got good young core with McGrath, Merritt, Ridley, Parrish, and 3 first-rounders, plus the 2 next-gen prospects to build around. You think 11 to 13 is generous?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah,
Bottom
so
four?
I reckon. Bottom four. Shot for the wooden spoon along with Kangaroos Hawthorn. I reckon. Adelaide, I think they can improve a little bit, so they might avoid 2 wooden spoons in a row. I think they're in for a long year. I think a couple of injuries, and the players are still getting to learn how each other plays because there's a few new players in there, and a new coach. I think that they're going to be up against it.
That'd be huge if Essendon and Hawthorn finish bottom too. That'd be huge fall.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Another team who's the AFL world loves to keep an eye on. Yeah. So they have a good base there with the young talent. So I think it'll just be about them trying to improve more so than the win-losses.
So we'll move on and do a couple more reviews next week, won't we?
Yeah, we might be halfway through. So there's only another, I think, a month until the preseason kicks off. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Catch you next week.